Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to every one of you. And it's a pleasure to be with you. So the topic of this series is educating for human flourishing. And as we know, we first have to start with ourselves. So educating ourselves in order to understand a little better the situation and also then work with groups and persons whom we meet. I will share now my screen. So flourishing in times of crisis. This is quite a challenge because we are in times of crisis. And crisis is always when we are somehow put out of our normal life. And when we are, and COVID-19 surely has thrown us out of the normal life. And since last year, we know what is a disruption of the normal. Initially, it was just a flu far away somewhere in China. Then it came closer and closer, and accompanied by lockdowns and strong regulations. Even today, many parts of our world, they are in a very bad shape, especially at the moment, India, Brazil, Argentina, and Paraguay. Nobody really knows when it will be better. Will we ever return to the former normal? The vaccine gives us hope, but in many places, it still needs to be distributed. It has not arrived yet. A poll in the US by the American Psychological Association presented in the report Stress in America called the experience of living through the pandemic a collective trauma. And the question remains, when will this end? Will it ever end? We do not know. The virus, with all its consequences, causes an enormous amount of stress and anxiety. Psychologists and therapists report a sharp rise in stress, anxiety, and depression-related symptoms in their clients. COVID-19 can bring out the worst in people, and it shows us also where our world today is especially in need. It can also bring out the best in people. In this situation of crisis, there emerged a great amount of practiced solidarity, like helping in the neighborhood, volunteers bringing food and other essentials to elderly and sick persons. As in every situation, what matters is how we respond to the challenge or disruption. Stress is a subjective feeling of emotional or physical tension. It might be caused by an event or thought. Even a thought can create stress that makes you feel frustrated, angry, or nervous. This is accompanied by a body reaction. Stress can be positive, eustress, such as when it helps you avoid danger or meet a deadline. What for one person is stress can be for another one just excitement. Therefore, it is very subjective and difficult to measure. Fear is one of the 7 universal emotions experienced by everyone around the world. Fear arises with the threat of harm, either physical, emotional, or psychological, real or imagined. While traditionally considered a negative emotion, fear actually serves an important role in keeping us safe as it mobilizes us to cope with potential danger. The situation, and especially now also with COVID, is perceived as a real, sometimes a life-threatening danger. We shut down and focus only on our survival needs: food, drink, physical security, being safe behind doors and fences or walls. COVID-19 and the lockdowns brings to the surface tensions which were already there before, like relational problems or violence, abuse in families and other groups, injustice on a small or local and on the global scale. This causes a lot of stress and anxiety. Resilience and hope for the future. What can help us to go through this difficult time? How can we, as women religious, as leaders of groups, as communities, instill hope and help that we and the people with whom we are living and working, to whom we are ministering, can flourish in this difficult situation? One answer is to activate resilience. What is that? Resilience is the capacity to recover, respond, and bounce back from challenging times. That is one definition. But the goal is not only to bounce back into the old shape. That might not be possible. But to become creative and able to invest in a good future, in a better future for all. From a psychological point of view, the following are helpful behaviors which lay the groundwork for our own well-being and the well-being of our communities and groups in difficult times. We can encourage these behaviors. For example, a healthy lifestyle with enough sleep, physical exercise, healthy food. Practice a hobby, music, art, and so on. Be social. Take time for good relationships, friendships. Create community schedules that encourage exchange and meaningful conversations. Strengthen spiritual life through meaningful liturgies, rituals. Practice mindfulness and gratitude. Be positive. Help others. Go out of yourself. Celebrate life in all its forms. Humor is especially helpful. Hope and attuning into the good. Lucy Hone, a resilience researcher, says in her TED Talk, she talks about the 3 secrets of resilient people. And she describes how she was dealing with the death of her 12-year-old daughter and her friends in an accident. I mean, she has studied resilience and knew everything about it, but here she was really touched by it personally, and that changed it. And what helped her getting over the loss was choosing life, not death, deliberately. Choosing life, not death, deliberately, and hunting for the good. She calls it hunting for the good. She recommends closing every day with at least finding 3 good things that happened to you and being grateful for that. I think from our spiritual tradition, we know that very well. To close the day, looking at the day and also considering the positive. Another approach, anti-fragile. We find this approach in the book of Nassim Nicholas Taleb, called Antifragile. According to Taleb, we live in a world which we cannot understand because it is so complex. We cannot even hope to understand it. Taleb proposes that we simply accept this reality, that we love it and try to thrive in it. This sounds first a little crazy, and immediately you ask yourself, but how? Are we not here to change things? How can we thrive in this complex reality with so many disturbances? COVID is only one of these. To make his point clear, he brings the example of wildfires. And I think in Australia, you are very familiar with these wildfires. In our modern world, we try to suppress small wildfires. We don't like them. The same is true for our disruptions in our little world. But this only leads to the accumulation of flammable materials on the forest floor, giving way to inevitable destructive infernos. We haven't grasped the function of the small wildfires, a disruption according to our point of view, in the whole of the system. We intervene and we make it worse. Sometimes through our interventions, it's not getting better. He says in his prologue, how to love the wind. Wind extinguishes a candle and energizes fire. Likewise, with randomness, uncertainty, chaos, disturbances, you want to use them, not to hide them. Use them. You want to be the fire and wish for the wind. In his book, Taleb distinguishes between fragile, robust, and anti-fragile. According to him, what is fragile breaks through the exposure to disturbance. What is robust just remains the same. And what is anti-fragile benefits from the exposure to disruption. According to Taleb, long-term stability in complex systems is best attained via frequent, small-scale volatility in our world's disturbances. Think of the example of the small wildfires. So let's not shy away from disturbances. They are part of life, but let's accept and even love them. Because even there we can find ways to thrive, find new ways, creative ways to make it better. But how? Creating a culture of encounter. I think Pope Francis gives us a good hint here. He often speaks of a culture of encounter. He challenges us to put all our energies in building up this kind of culture, especially in difficult times where we experience disruptions of what we consider as normal. Quotation: "The continued global health crisis has painfully highlighted the urgent need to promote a culture of encounter for the whole human family and for all men and women to be passionate about meeting others, seeking points of contact, building bridges, planning a project that includes everyone." We have the important task of bringing people together for meaningful conversations about the burning issues of today. And I think UISG is doing that, and focusing our energies on how to best respond from a faith viewpoint. This means building bridges, looking for ways of reconciliation, easing suffering as much as possible, and fostering a holistic human development. In Fratelli Tutti 215, Pope Francis uses the image of a polyhedron that represents a society where differences coexist, complementing, enriching, and reciprocally illuminating one another, even amid disagreements and reservations. The quotation: "Life, for all its confrontations, is the art of encounter. I have frequently called for the growth of a culture of encounter capable of transcending our differences and divisions. This means working to create a many-faceted polyhedron whose different sides form a variegated unity in which the whole is greater than the part." The image of a polyhedron can represent a society where differences coexist, complementing, enriching, and reciprocally illuminating one another. Each of us can learn something from others. No one is useless and no one is expendable. This also means finding ways to include those on the peripheries of life, for they have another way of looking at things. They see aspects of reality that are invisible to the centers of power where weighty decisions are made. Compassion, an outgrowth and at the same time the root of the culture of encounter, is compassion. Compassion is and caring are most needed in a leader and in our communities today. The meaning of compassion is to recognize the suffering of others and then to take action to help. Compassion embodies a tangible expression of love for those who are suffering. Frederick Buechner, an American writer and poet, once said, "Compassion is sometimes the fatal capacity for feeling what it is like to live inside somebody else's skin. It is the knowledge that there can never really be any peace and joy for me until there is peace and joy finally for you too. Compassion does not drain us. No, it makes us more resilient. It mobilizes our immune system. It enlivens us. It enhances our neural integration. Compassion is good for others. It is good for us, and it is good for all of creation. It helps us to build up a more caring environment. So let's transform our world with loving compassion. Here, I want to show you an example of our sisters in Paraguay, who since more than 40 years fight at the side of the Ava Guarani, an indigenous group, for their rights and their land. We see what so often happens. They are driven from their land, and this happened on the 13th of May this year. Our sisters were present and have filmed it. In spite of many setbacks, our sisters with many others continue walking with them and supporting them in their struggle. And I just want to share with you a little video of the situation when they were driven away from their land. You saw in this little video taken by our sisters the situation where the police is really surrounding them in their temple. That was their temple, their holy place where they have liturgy. They are surrounded and slowly pushed away. And afterwards you see how their temple is destroyed and tractors are already there to cultivate the land. This is happening today, and not only in Paraguay. This was one example. Another example shows an initiative in Urkela, an Indian diocese, where our sisters are involved, religious, bringing hope to COVID patients. One patient says that she finds God's compassionate care in the service of the sisters. Loving and kind service instills hope, mental strength, and encouragement in our life. It makes us resilient and anti-fragile. Specific challenges for us today. Looking at our world today, we face several disruptions as religious women and as a world community. COVID-19 is not our biggest challenge. The biggest challenge is ecology and restoring balance to our planet. How can we intensify our commitment to working to save our common home? COVID-19 brings to the fore tensions which already exist, especially the divide between rich and poor. How can we live in solidarity? This is not a matter of health. It is a matter of global justice and peace. We are a global community. How can we act locally and at the same time globally? In the US, we observe the Black Lives Matter movement. What is our own situation with regard to equality? How much ethnocentricity and discrimination do we still have in our own ranks? As faith communities, we believe in a God who has good plans for us and wants us to prosper, even in very uncertain and difficult times. This can give us the passion to continue working for a world which is more beautiful, just and peaceful, and where everyone has a dignified space to live. Love and compassion are necessities, not luxuries. Without them, humanity cannot survive. They are the path to thrive, even in difficult times. Love and compassion are anti-fragile. They are full of surprises, messy, risky, and impossible to imprison them into our plans. And with this, I end, and thank you very much for your attention.